All right.
What's up, everybody?
What's up?
What's up?
Welcome back to the Video Game Hour. I'm Tavit.
And I'm Yussef.
And this is it. This video game, the video game of the hour is...
Dishonored 2, Death of the Outsider.
Death of the Outsider.
Sage, not exactly Dishonored 2.
And we're actually in the Boogie Down Bronx today.
Yeah.
This is Yussef's not-so-humble digs. Very, very awesome digs.
It's pretty normal.
Look,
come on.
You got a good apartment, man.
You get the tail of my cat over here.
Our guest star
frame.
for the episode.
It's being, very friendly.
Yeah, being very cat-like.
He just likes to dominate the couch. So
yeah.
He doesn't want us to be on the couch without him knowing what's going on.
Exactly. But unlike a dog, not like bounding into frame, just kind of lingering right at the edge of it.
The very possible edge of the frame.
Semi-aloof.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by me regressing. When I come up to my old high school neighborhood, I drink old high school beers. So that's how we do.
It's a good beer. For a high school beer.
For high school beer.
You go a lot worse.
I know, it's true. That's true. I mean, I wasn't a huge drinker back in high school. I saved that till I got to college.
Yes, like many of us. This is for the best. You need to study hard to get to college.
Exactly.
And then, once you're there,
let it all
hang out as much as possible.
I don't know if you had the same
American
experience too. Like, I got to college and I was like, this is easy compared to like, high school was raw dog, man.
It's like, no more standardized tests, like no more bullshit, subjects for the most part that you don't want to learn.
Choose your own adventure, if you will.
So that was nice. But speaking of choosing your own adventure...
Nice segue. Amazing.
Let's talk about the immersive sim that we played this past few weeks, Death of the Outsider. So it's an expansion for the Dishonored franchise. Technically, the expansion to Dishonored 2. So there was 1, there was some DLC for 1, there was 2, and then this is like kind of the sole expansion, downloadable content pack. And in it, you're playing this woman named Billy Lurk, who is this assassin who used to work for Dowd, who was the major enemy / protagonist of the first game. Like, you play as him in the DLC for the first game. But he's kind of the other side of the coin to the game's main protagonist being Corvo Attano.
Corvo Attano, yes.
And so, Dowd is like the head of this group called the Whalers, and they're just like this pretty mercenary assassin gang that Billy was a part of in the first game. And then
Dowd killed the queen?
Dowd killed the Empress. Who was kind of who Corvo was working for, and her death being the act that dishonored Corvo and created the name of the game and all of that. So he was very central to, he was the kind of inciting character for why Dishonored is Dishonored. Why people got Dishonored.
Correct me if I'm wrong, because I definitely accidentally killed like one person in Dishonored 1, and so I don't think I got like the pure ending or whatever. I went for a no-kill, but I fucked it up.
The same Undertale.
Exactly the same as Undertale. Was Corvo ever re-honored? Was he like, did he get his honor back?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, no matter how you play, generally he does. I'll just go through the plot.
Also, the interesting thing is I never played the second game. I never played Dishonored 2. So Yusuf's kind of like our subject.
You never finished Dishonored 1.
I finished Dishonored 1.
You did? Okay.
I just didn't get a no-kill. I didn't get like the perfect ending.
Yeah. But even if you have some kills, it's pretty good. Good ending.
Yeah. But even I felt like you restore, the princess to the empress, whatever.
Sure.
Like even that had some like twinge of darkness to it. Like the whole game is kind of dark.
It's a dark world. Essentially the world is this group of islands that are very Victorian inspired, kind of turn of the century, like
1850s to 1880s kind of range.
Before the 20th century. Kind of the industrial revolution, a little bit around that area, like a little steampunk, and so it's totally fictional, but it's a empire with a kingdom, and it's not a democracy.
Right. So
you're basically in this Victorian series of islands, and in the first game, the Empress, whose name is escaping me because she was fridged very quickly.
She was fridged super quickly. It was like the first 5 seconds of the game.
So she gets killed by Dowd and his crew, and then the player is playing as Corvo Attano, who's her kind of royal protector, and you'll find out later her lover. And she's murdered. Her daughter Emily is kidnapped, and then Corvo is blamed for the crime.
It's like double frame though, because I remember halfway through the game there was like another reveal where like the people that like took over the bar with you, like they double cross you.
Yes.
You're like triple crossed.
I'll get to
Double
it.
Dishonored.
You know, he goes out. He gets Emily back. He breaks out of the jail, obviously, because you're the hero, so you can do whatever you want. And you kind of work with these royalists who are this group of like kind of like a lot of bureaucrats, bourgeoisie, like military members who want to like kind of wrest the control of government back from the. So I forgot, like basically, like one of the Empress's advisors had conducted the coup.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of go through the whole game. You know, you kill a bunch of people. The game has a structure, very like kind of every level is a similar structure where there's like a person you have to assassinate or multiple people, and by doing that, you kind of move forward the events of the games until you get to the point where you can kind of overthrow the corrupt leadership that had that was behind the plot to kill the Empress and blame you.
Yeah.
And after you do that...
Dishonorers.
After you kind of do all that, you then get double-crossed by the people who are supposedly trying to... or on your side, or like the people who got you out of prison and use you as a tool to like kind of kill all these key people. Okay. Of course, they're just using the tool so they could then kill you.
Standard video game fare right there. The double cross.
Just trusted it.
Yeah. Would you kindly?
Exactly. But you kill him back. You get him back and you save the day. You save the princess. And the second game has you playing at kind of skips forward in time, and you are Corvo and Emily, the new Empress, are still are in power. And then a kind of a similar, I guess, turn of events happens.
Yeah.
Where they're deposed, and this time they're deposed by a woman called Delilah.
Okay.
Who is kind of this witch character, and she showed up in the DLC for Dishonored.
Oh, so, the Witches of Dunmore or whatever.
Briggamore.
Dunmore.
Briggamore witches. Lots of Moors.
A lot of more.
And
yet very few black people in the
I was
the
thinking
time
Moors.
period more. No, I know.
But they're definitely
messing around. Yeah.
There weren't too many Moors.
No.
So like in the second game, you're trying to get back in power.
Right.
And it takes place in a southern island, not in the main city of Dunwall. So you're in Serkonos, which is like kind of is where the Corvo came from. So you kind of get it's cool. It's a glimpse of it. It's very like it's where Dunwall was like this cool Victorian Londonish city. Serkonos is a lot more like it nods to the colonialist nature of that time period. So like it's a city that has a lot of like kind of colony aspects to it, where like the architecture is inspired. Like this jungle is taken over a lot more, and you get like kind of beautiful like French colonial style, like double windows and like narrow streets, and then it lead up into like jungly mountains. So like you kind of have that colonial city aspect to it, and that's where the events of that game take place.
So that's Dishonored 2.
Dishonored 2,
Very
cool.
and
then key to explaining this is that in Dishonored 2, the woman who breaks you out of, or like helps you get out of the city when you're under attack, is Billy Lurk, who is she was Dowd's second-hand woman, and she was helping him out. In the end of Dishonored 1 in the DLC, she actually betrays Dowd. Because she had grown up with the witch, with Delilah, and so she kind of teams up with Delilah to kind of betray Dowd.
This makes the first mission of Death of the Outsider make a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
See, I'm going in totally blind.
It's a lot of like lead up, especially because so much of it happens in like DLC actually.
Right.
Because like Billy's role is very like kind of ancillary to a lot of the plot of the games.
Yeah.
But in the second one, she does come in and she kind of hides her identity. She's like I think she calls herself like Megan Foster. And,
that's why she keeps saying Megan's dead. See, look at all this stuff.
I know, it's all coming together.
No plot playthrough right over here, man. That's crazy.
It's kind of like when you like jump into a show like in the
season, like in the middle of it.
Go back and watch like the first episode. You're
totally
like,
in media res.
Yeah. So she like kind of helps either Emily or Corvo. You can play as either of them in that game.
Okay.
If like you pick one, the other one just gets like frozen in rock and like conveniently like put aside. as a way to like mechanically, narratively explain.
Wait,
like,
actually
why.
frozen in rock?
Yeah, because like the witch has like all these powers, so she kind of like freezes you when you try and attack her.
Amazing.
So Megan like kind of takes you down to Zakonos, and you kind of go ahead, similarly go around and kill key figures that were behind the coup until you can like figure out how to like overthrow Delilah.
Okay, cool.
In the end of the game, like Megan reveals that she's Billy, and then you kind of forgive her. I think that's really the only option. You're like, okay, yeah,
cool.
you killed my mom,
survive,
or you killed my wife, like, but you know, you are like she helped you so much in that game as a way to kind of, I think, find redemption.
Okay.
So and then at the end of that, like, I guess, series of missions or of Dishonored 2, like the main game, she's just like, Billy Lurk is like, I'm Billy Lurk. I'm gonna go find out and you know, figure out what's going on with him, because he's been like missing, or like she kind of, well, like she's found redemption with, you know, Corvo and Emily for being responsible for their, you know, for the previous Empress's death, and now she's gonna find redemption with Dowd, who she had betrayed.
Okay, so
that's how Death of the Outsider kind of.
All of this makes a lot of sense now.
Yeah.
This is thank you so much for that rundown on the series. But there's an interesting omission that you've made throughout all of this, which I actually remember feeling when I was playing the first Dishonored, which is throughout all of this intrigue and all of this setup, you never once mentioned the Outsider. Right?
That's true.
And when I was playing the first game, I had this incredible kind of, there was not any, it was just this sense of dissonance or distance from the character of the Outsider, possibly because the Outsider is so liminal. It's this like interdimensional, like semi-god being that like comes in and out and like assists Corvo by giving him powers and a mark or whatever, and like he's marked Dowd as well.
Yes.
And there's like a whole bunch of stuff here, but like I always felt like it was such a unnecessary extra like addition to the plot. And then this is called Death of the Outsider, so I'm jumping back in at the like deep end, like far end of the pool, and I'm like, all right, so it's time to kill that guy I didn't really like that much from the first game. Great, like, don't know why, but why, right? Like, who is the Outsider, and why is that character even a mainstay in this world that's already so rich in, you were saying, Victorian lore? There's actually a lot of like whaling like to do in the game. It's not even steampunk, it's like oil punk in a way, like whale oil punk, because like there's like all these explosive barrels that are full of like glowing whale oil that like powers the whole world. And you know, whale oil did power a lot of the world in the 1800s. It was a very very important fuel and commodity. So why the Outsider? Who the Outsider? What the Outsider?
What the Outsider?
What the Outsider?
Yeah, it's actually it's funny that I did admit it, because you're right. He's a liminal character. He's like very, in many ways, he's unnecessary to the central plot, except as like a Deus Ex character, where he kind of comes in, gives you powers that allow you, to overcome much more, or overcome like extreme odds against how you normally would perform.
It's like Dishonored 2, Death of the MacGuffin.
yeah.
Just kidding.
It's essentially, I think it's almost like an ending that storyline. It's like, we're gonna now, we'll find a way to like tie up that, the MacGuffin or like the Deus Ex Machina like device that has powered the rest of the game.
Okay.
And it's pretty much what he is. And I think it's interesting because I feel like they've always had conflict with how to present the character, like, and they've shifted him a little bit as between the first and second game.
Okay.
It's just a character that definitely I think they recognize a lot of people don't necessarily like.
What is he like? What's his point? What's the purpose? Yeah,
I think at least in the first game, he's supposed to be kind of like kind of a ambivalent god character who's like playing with humanity as like a series of toys. Like like I'm gonna throw some powers here, throw some powers there, and then watch you have fun. Because every time you wander onto one of his shrines, he'll warp you to his world and be like, oh, you can kill people or you can not, and we'll see. I just gave you the power. And
interesting.
Then,
so he kind of represents neutrality in some ways.
Yeah, he's kind of he's almost like this
in the
like
game
detached morality, where he's like he's trying to see what happens when you give the gun to the child or something. Like that's
interesting.
It is really how he views humanity. I mean, because he's like this 1,000-year-old deity essentially.
Okay. But it's interesting that in a game where every single mission, as you said, is capped off by the choice of whether you kill or just capture or kill or incapacitate, the outsider does start to begin to feel like a characterization of the neutrality of the game engine in a way. It's like, here's all these powers, here's a scenario, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, and I think narratively and mechanically, that definitely coalesces, and more, I think as the series progresses, as they as Arcane becomes aware of, or becomes better at kind of meshing the game and or structuring the game in a way that you feel like what you're doing feels natural to what the narrative is saying that you're doing, because it is a game about making choices, and it's a game about that gives you a wide range of flexibility of how to approach something. So it would make sense that then to create this character like the outsider, who is almost like the game developer whispering in your ear.
Kind of felt that way.
What are you gonna do? I gave you these tools, and now go crazy. Maybe I'll judge you because sure, if I'm a game developer who has their own their own set of expectations of how a player would approach something, maybe I'll be like, oh, you just went in and killed everybody? That's kind of fucked up. But it's totally that outlook where you're detached.
Yeah, you're detached. You've made the art, now you've
your
left
world,
it into the
and
world.
It's not a real world. It's this toy box world that you've erected, that you're then kind of all these moral quandaries are happening throughout the world, and are being played off of your actions as a player.
Totally.
They're being affected like butterfly effect style from everything you do. So the more violent you act, the more ugly the world looks, and the more violent other NPCs might be. If you play the game completely non-violently, sometimes the game will look a certain way. But then if you go back and do it and kill everybody, you might stumble across some mugger killing an innocent bystander.
Okay, this is interesting though, because all of that seemingly was stripped out of Death of the Outsider. There's a real sense of that neutrality takes a sort of front seat, because I remember that feeling when I played Dishonored 1 of and this is also partially not just the game designer, but me, the game player. I know we talked about this before, if there's a possibility of a no-kill win, then I try my best to do stealth and no-kill, just because it's usually a more difficult and a more rewarding path.
Yeah.
But Death of the Outsider really felt like all of those moral guardrails had been lowered, and I was just really, as you said, approaching it like a playground or a diorama that I could just go in. And I honestly I've never been so kill happy in a game like this before, in a immersive, stealthy sim kind of game, action sim kind of game. I just went in daggers blazing or whatever, whippy wrist murder dagger dart thing blazing. Yeah. I just killed everybody, and there was seemingly no effect. Is that the case, or is there?
It is, yeah. And it's interesting that is what they decided to do with this. I think it's it might be a result of, I think, in two ways, because the game is both a narrative conclusion and a kind of feels like a serious conclusion. I mean, they might make a third Dishonored, but
if it's sold well, then that's the machine.
Yeah, I mean, but it's certainly capped to a lot of storylines, that happened, that kind of led up through that game. You kind of see the end of in Dishonored 2, you see the end of Delilah the Witch's storyline. You see, and then in this DLC, you see the end of Dowd's and the Outsider, and ostensibly Billy Lurk's, at least her involvement with it too.
Okay.
So I think
and Corvo's still alive.
Yeah, Corvo's still around. Cool. So you kind of I think it's definitely a conclusion to a lot of narrative arcs, and also I think it's a reflection of just being the third or fourth or fifth, if you count the DLCs.
Yeah, if you count the DLCs.
Chapter of a long running franchise, right, where I think it's almost there's a little bit more trust in the player and a little more openness and less of a desire to pass judgment necessarily on how you're approaching the game. And I think also it has a lot to do with the character herself, where she's always been an outsider, but not that kind of outsider, a normal outsider to the events of the game. She was a DLC for the first game. She was kind of a quest giver, so she was more involved in the second game, but she still wasn't really doing much beyond.
You could sort of say she was lurking in this. Forget it. That was terrible.
Sure. I'll let it go. I'll let it go.
Not
but
funny.
but yeah, she's always like kind of extraneous to the main plot. So when you then kind of fill her shoes, I think the game's saying like this is different. Like this is not the the royal family that you are playing in the first game. These are not like the classic protagonisty video game
She's
characters. Like, I mean, she has a dark past. She has an ambiguous like moral code that's like kind of shifting, and you can play it a lot more. I mean, you can play it like you said violently.
Yeah.
I mean, you could also
do it no kill.
And you can do a no kill too. So I think it's like it's a little bit more like
the tools are.
I think it's more a commentary on her like marginality in society, like the fact that she.
Maybe she's not being treated as a full character with a moral code,
or I think it's her relationship to the power structure, like because in the main games you're playing royalty, you're literally playing like the queen
or like the
empress
protector,
or her protector,
yeah,
like a cop or like a president.
True. Fucking cops, man, again.
So you're like that's your character, and in Death of the Outsider you are like a criminal. In that society, and you are kind of outside of that society. So I think that's where they're trying to place you, and that's why they're kind of trying to like dismantle or at least like defang these kind of like moral rules that had previously existed.
But they impose a whole bunch of new rules. In fact, when I was playing Death of the Outsider, I think I didn't do it in the very first mission, but by the second mission I had found the job notice board or whatever. And really, the game became something that was very much akin to the latest Hitman, which we also covered in the Video Game Hour, where this essentially, as you had called it, sort of like a toy box or a playground, very much so. Each little level that you enter is this like really intricate series of passageways and access routes to a main structure. Or structures, like a sub and a main structure, that you need to infiltrate through murder or through stealth, and then take out your prime target. Very much like the Hitman game, but these additional quests or these like side missions, these side hustles within the main mission add very Hitman-esque special conditions that you need to meet, objects you need to find, routes you need to take. I finally got to the conservatory one where you were right. I have to like kill everybody except for one character. Yeah. And I was like, oh, matches my playstyle for this game. And it really felt like it took on the sort of same aspects and same personality as that Hitman game, with some key differences though. Like the gameplay felt very fast and loose compared to the Hitman experience, which was very rigid. And
you can't really go in guns blazing in Hitman.
No, I think the game had more guardrails about murder in the open. Where Billy Lurk, like I'm using her like displace power to like set up these ridiculous domino effect things, but on the fly. Like I needed to plan less in Dishonored, and I enjoyed that more actually. I liked the fluidity and the pace of Dishonored more than I enjoyed the pace and lack of fluidity in Hitman. But I definitely felt like they were kinfolk.
Oh yeah, I think there was a lot of similarities there. And I mean, basically to explain it, the contracts were you kind of go to a job board and there's like 4 or 5.
There's like one in every level.
Yeah, or like 1 to 4 extra missions that don't have anything to do with the main mission, and it's like some random character paying you money to do something specific in that world. So some will be like, "There's a book I lost there.
Yeah.
Can you go acquire it? There's a person you got to kill."
I found I've hidden a mystical object, but good luck with all my traps in my apartment.
Yeah, I was like, well, you're an asshole.
Yeah, what a dick.
Shitty job.
Why would you put that out there?
Yeah, but you could also just
Also,
go,
I'm a trap maker.
Yeah, it's a trap though.
It's a trap.
It's a trap.
I got trap.
But yeah, and those really open up the world, and they kind of give you an impetus to explore the world more than you would if there was no other thing to do. And you had stuff like that in the other games, but it's mainly just like there is like a bone charm and in this area, like when you like kind of put up your vision to like see bone charms in the first games, you'd be like, oh, there's an apartment that's not anywhere near the main apartment.
Yeah,
so
but
I'm
it's
gonna,
like
or
it's
the
a
main,
real place.
The main like mission waypoint. But the apartment then you would go there, and then there'd be a little environmental storytelling, and like other aspects of the world would be like kind of revealed from that exploration. So it's kind of like building off of that, but making it a lot more concrete because it's giving you something beyond just like a collectible object. Like
Exactly.
It's giving you like kind of an actual parameters. Sometimes that can be very challenging.
It can be very challenging, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was funny, I kind of like accidentally completed most of them on the second mission, because I like found the job board like basically after I had completed the mission.
Oh, nice.
And I like went and got all of them and it was like complete.
Oh,
I was
nice.
like, all right. But then I also had spent like 10 hours on that mission. It was something ridiculous. Like, because I
That was a composer mission?
yeah, it was a composer mission. And it's an interesting thing because, like I said, I was enjoying the pace more of Dishonored over Hitman, but I definitely had to break a few of my habits to get the best experience out of the game. The game engine and the game mechanics and dynamics were such that my slow, plodding, no-kill way of playing was absolutely possible. But I think also the combination of like wanting to get this game done so we could record, and because some other very important games have come out
That
shall not be named until another video game hour. I really, by the end of that second mission, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I'm reading on people like online, and they're like, there's 5 missions in the game, and I can beat it in 10 hours. And I was like, I just played mission 2 for like 10 hours.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, okay,
Yeah,
like,
this is a game
I'm
you
doing
can get
this
through very
shit
quickly.
way too carefully.
No,
And then
I
I was
mean,
like,
maybe.
fuck it, what? Just started like throwing a whole bunch of like daggers out and just
Yeah.
murdering people.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, each mission could be completed in like 5 minutes,
Yeah.
10 minutes maybe.
Oh, yeah. That's always been the case with Dishonored.
So I looked up a bunch of speed runs, and that's where I started to sort of see a very interesting thing kind of start to unfold. This game is consistently called an immersive sim. Why is that?
Well, that's a contentious definition or a controversial definition.
Because it's certainly immersive.
Yes.
I get that, but where does sim come from? Does that resonate with you at all? Do you feel like it's a sim? Why?
Well, I mean,
give me like unpack it a little bit more.
There's been some discussion, but I'll link a pretty good article by this guy Robert Yang, who like kind of wrote about whether the immersive sim was like kind of a second incarnation of it, because the first round was obviously like Deus Ex, the original one, like Thief.
Yep.
A lot of the progenitors of the Arcane Studio guys, like they had worked on some of these games before.
Thief, Deus.
Yeah. And then so these games are kind of them reliving that tradition and kind of paying homage to those games. Like especially like a lot of these missions in Death of the Outsider felt extremely thiefy, and
they did.
And,
the bank especially.
The bank. There's like a bank heist which feels very like traditional in terms of structure
and
of
thiefy,
like
specifically.
Yeah, totally. You're like literally
cracking
robbing a bank.
vaults and shit. Yeah.
And what made those, what categorized those as their own like kind of subgenre of an action, first-person action game, I guess, was that immersive sim element, which was essentially to the ability to like kind of approach a world in a creative way and use like many of the different objects that you can then find in that world to solve the mission in a number of like non-standard ways, like as opposed to your average maybe like Uncharted or like linear action game where you kind of expected to follow a path and
the only key to a puzzle is the bullets in your gun.
Yeah, or there is
mark.
Literally a key to the puzzle.
Yeah,
that you gotta pick up
or
to open
exactly,
the door.
Totally.
Like a Doom game or something, and you need to go get the key to open the blue door.
Yeah.
Like this is like there's a key, but there's also like a window, but there's also a basement, or you can possess somebody and walk through a door, or you can possess a rat, or you can go over the roof. Like there's just like a bunch of different ways to progress, and then you can also be violent or non-violent. I think there's always an option too, in terms of giving you that stealth option. So I think, I mean, immersive as a term is a little meaningless because it's kind of overused in terms of like describing games, because like most games to some extent are immersive because if you're believing in the world and believe you're a character in that world, you are immersed. But I think the simulation-y element of that name comes from giving you a tool set to creatively solve problems in a kind of enclosed space.
And for me, it's the opposite. Semantically, because I totally felt and bought into the immersive moniker. I was like, that's perfect. It's totally an immersive game because I'm put in this scenario with a very specific characterization, with a specific set of tools, with some secondary objects that allow me to like sort of trigger reactions from that game world, but the sim part felt a little hollow to me, only because I get that there are multiple paths, and I get that there are multiple objects, and I get that there are multiple approaches, and all of that is so exciting as a player. That's what I look for in a game. It's why I love Deus. It's why I love Metal Gear Solid. It's why I love all these different games that allow you to solve puzzles or scenarios in a number of different ways.
Yeah.
But I stopped short of calling it a sim only because it felt so limited, so focused in its application of the set pieces and of the world. Like, for example, objects really have very, very few roles that they can play for you. You can find an object that is magically translated into coins, like the pearl fan and the refined whale oil jugs and whatever, the gold ignots and all that stuff. Ingots. And then there's other objects that are literally just made to produce sound, right? You throw them, whiskey glass, bottle, full or empty, whatever. There's food items that give you health, and then there's whale oil canisters that explode or power objects. Am I missing anything?
There
may be some other.
Like all the tools you have as the character. Like,
the tools you have as the
various
character.
Grenades, bullets,
Yep.
sleep darts, kill darts, traps,
exactly,
etc., etc.
And all of those objects come together to create a range of different ways that I can end up doing one of two things to other characters, which is kill them or permanently put them to sleep for the duration of the mission. Sure. And I think it was in the fact that sleep versus death were actually pretty much the same choice, except for the time it took to render that decision upon the other. Chokeouts take a little bit longer than kills directly. Yeah. But in other games that I've played within this stealthy world, there have been different waits to sleep versus death. Sleep, sometimes you wake back up, right? Death is permanent. Sure. And there's a weight to it, there's a morality to it, and there's a whole, different endings and all sorts of different stuff that a game can trot out based on those decisions. But when we remove all of those, I also kind of lost a bit of the meaning of the word sim within this genre description, because there was no real, to me, as a player in the moment, there was no real consequence to one decision that I would make or another, because if the plot wasn't going to change, if the world wasn't going to change based on my decisions, and if the character sleeping was actually the same level of sort of the same totalizing effect upon the enemy, they could not come back to wakingness. That really just rendered the entire experience a little bit less of a simulation and more of a, I don't know, immersive multi-path thing. I don't even know what to call it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good take, and it's really just about the definitions of words.
Yeah, because, I'm being semantic.
And in both cases, both words are just it's a marketing term, obviously, and I mean, but I think both words can be stretched and semantically applied in different ways. Simulation often literally just means things will behave in a realistic way, a racing sim or a flight sim or or The Sims, where you kind of or SimCity, games where you're kind of taking probably complex systems, simplifying them, and creating and having things react in a way to your input. Which, I mean, so many games essentially do this, and I don't know, I don't necessarily think that having kind of a moral reaction to your actions means anything about, or signifies whether it's a sim or not. I mean, I think it's just probably your personal response or your emotional, whether the morals,
it's my subjective,
whether the morals of the game resonate with you, essentially. Versus, because I think, I mean, if you're going to talk about whether it's a sim, it is. I mean, if you throw an object, somebody hears it and walks to the wall, they're responding to your input. And so if you drop something that's flammable and it explodes, so it's the same thing with Breath of the Wild. You could probably consider that immersive sim, because I
would consider that almost more of an immersive sim in some ways.
I mean, sure, I'm not even trying to compare it. I'm just saying if you're going to describe what is immersive, what does that mean? Then yes, simulations,
systems in the game,
systems that you can use to like have creative creative scenario problem solving that like is like kind of is generated by your input.
Sure.
So like a lot of games will do that. I think calling Dishonored and its franchise like an immersive sim really mainly is for the marketing angle of it, where it's like it just basically is saying I'm categorizing this as like one of the kind of tranche of games that do this thing, like Deus Ex, all the new Deus Exes, Thief, Prey, and really anything by Arcane that they've made recently, and then like the stuff that happened like 10, 15 years ago or 20 years ago.
Yeah, totally.
So like that is the more like for me the more effective application of the word, or the more like maybe relevant, and then you can get into semantic arguments. But I guess the question is like probably a more interesting question is like, do you think that the systems are successful at making you feel like you have freedom to solve a situation or to solve the problems the game throws at you in creative ways?
Sort of, yes. More yes than no. Absolutely more yes than no. It succeeds, and I think that maybe because I'm such a fan of these types of games, particularly Deus Ex, like I'm already in a mental mode where I'm looking for the alternate paths. But there's even a limit there, right? That we're on designed paths versus being given tools where we can forge our own is an interesting thing, because and it's not a bad thing. I'm not actually discrediting the game for the decisions that it makes and the decision that it makes and the rules that it has to impose upon the player. For example, like there are many moments where you come to a gate, or a window with gates over it, right? And you look at that gate, and you know that in the simulation part of my mind, I'm like, well, if I'm Billy Lurk, I'm reaching my hand through a gate that my arm fits through, my weird skeletal arm fits through, and I'll cast Displace so I can just end up around the gate. But the game is like, no, friend. We put these gates here because you as a player need to figure out that we created a couple paths for you that you can take, that there's a little problem you got to solve. There's a person behind the gate, and they'll see you if you come at it from this other angle, so you can't just displace through gates or windows or whatever. And you kind of think about it, you're like, well, I want, I'm there. I'm there with you in this sim moment. And I get why I can't do it, because it would make the scenario impossibly easy and unfunnily easy, right? But I also am like, but I'm almost there in terms of engine, in terms of like game choice and ability. Like I'm in a scenario where you're telling me I can do whatever I need to do to solve this problem and murder this person. I certainly can't talk my way into or out of a scenario. That's just not a mechanic. It's not that kind of game. So it's simulating being a murderer or person who puts people in chokeholds really, really well. But then I can't cast myself through a gate that obviously, and it's little moments like that where, again, it does not detract from the overall enjoyment of it. And maybe it's just I'm asking too much of computerized systems, and there would be way too much to design. There would be way too many contingencies to take into account. But you have games that are coming out now that are systematically, fourth walling and breaking a lot of the standard rules that we associate with the dissonance between a character and the actions I can take as a player. And I'll bring up one specific example. I haven't played the game yet, but there's a game called Nier Automata, and it's like a Platinum Games like slasher, like beat 'em up game. It's supposed to be really good, and I saw a playthrough of it, or like some gameplay of it, where the player goes into the menu, and in the menu you're simulating being inside of the character. You go into your internal BIOS, this like cyborg's like options menu in their brain, and there's an option to remove the core firmware chip or whatever, and you do it, and the game ends, and it's game over because you've like essentially canceled yourself.
Self-destructive.
And it's completely cosmetic. It does nothing but renders you to the game over and the credits screen. But in that acknowledgement of the options and the format, it really gives me a sense of like, oh, funny, it doesn't really affect gameplay, but it brings me one step closer to the semantic truth of what a simulator could be.
But even that is just like a kind of a nod to the fourth wall.
It is. It's more fourth wall than simulator.
Because it's like, I think we have to pinpoint what, like, you know, you don't want a simulation of the real world.
No,
because that's
you don't want.
You go outside and then you shoot somebody and the cops arrest you, and then that's the end of the game or something. Like,
yeah,
you still want a design experience. You know,
there's a limit.
And it's something we've talked about a lot. It's just like, you know, whether the rules of the game like allow you to do what you want to do, or, you know, where you run into them, like, where you butt up against them. You know, and like whether like you need something to be realistic or not.
Yeah, I had the same experience in The Witcher where there was some mission early on in the game where you like find this like werewolfy dude and his like lover, and I was like, oh man, I'm a good guy. Like, Tavit's a good guy, so Tavit's gonna like let the werewolf live and go out of the cave. And the game was like, no, we built a cutscene for you assholes who like want to let the werewolf live. And like you go outside and Geralt is like, I'm actually a Witcher and I have to kill you because you're a monster and you killed people. And then like the game forces you into a confrontation with the werewolf because there's a path that this character would take. And just like in that Billy Lurk scenario, we're murderers. We're assassins. We're going to, you know, save the guy that raised us and gave us our assassinly powers. And yeah, we're gonna slit some throats and do some beautiful disgusting animations.
Yes.
Holy
good
crap, the murder. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't get grossed out very easily, but I was like, you put the dagger through the guy's head, because in every moment the player is simulating, or, you know, in a simulation of what it means to be Billy Lurk in these scenarios.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like whether the game is you know, that's the conflict, right, between obviously the eternal conflict of games between the mechanics of the game and whether the mechanics support the story that it's telling. And the fact that it wants to tell a story, because some games don't really want to tell stories that much, and I think, you know, Dishonored games certainly do. Like, and they want to create a character. What's cool is, like, you know, Billy is a character. You know, she has her particular like she feeds back from the world.
Quite a funny character.
She has a perspective on the world. So like, sometimes, you know, like, and there's like this conflict between, like, you know, you playing the game and treating like being like Tavit's playing the game, like, I'm in this world, I'm the character, I'm killing or not killing, I'm like, you know, messing around with the environment, or you're like, you know, I'm role playing as Billy Lurk and kind of having that unique experience of playing a game where you're being told a story, but you're also like telling that story, and you're part of that story. And then like, are you like, do you like, are you in a position where you are being almost like forced to like listen to a story that you don't want to hear, which is like a lot of times what happens with lengthy cutscenes or what have you in games, where players will just want to skip them and go on to this different layer of the story that is like still narrative, but maybe a little kind of where the needle's swinging back toward player-driven emergent narrative, or are you like into this like kind of role-playing and then like having the story told to you through like your actions, and like and just being totally cool with that, and feeding back off of that in a positive way, like
totally.
So I think that's like kind of it's a really big like task for any game to kind of ride that line,
and especially like this
between
emerging
freedom,
this interactive media that we are so obsessed with. You know, like this is meant to be stories that are told with your participation, whether it's, you know, press X to mourn in the Call of Duty joke, or however you connect the player to the narrative. I think it's a really important thing. So I ask you, because you've played all of the Dishonored stuff, and I know you really love it. Like, how was the story for you? Was it a payoff?
Yeah, there was certainly payoff there, and I think for me, like, it was mainly in the way the perspective of your character shifts over the three games. Because Dishonored 1, you start playing as Corvo, as you mentioned, the cop who's like just like
cop of royalty,
grizzly McDude, who's just like super upset about getting, you know, by his, you know, lady getting fridged and his surrogate child being kidnapped, and
not
like,
his actual baby.
It is his baby, but like, you know, not it's not it's a secret, you know, so he has to kind of pretend it's just like her child,
right?
So it's a very traditional like narrative, I think, like, and disappointingly so.
Yep.
Considering how like rich other parts of the world are in terms of like the way they like structure society, and they critique the structure of society. They critique religion.
Yep.
There's a very like religious sect called the Order. I think they're called the Order. But yeah, so you kind of have like some parts of the game that are clever, and some parts that feel very like reliant on like a status quo that's kind of boring. And then in the second one, they like step it up a notch, and you get to the option to play as Emily Caldwin, who's like the daughter of the Empress. She is now the Empress. She's a cool character, interesting, has her own backstories and her own like relationship with the rest of the world, and that perspective is very different than if you're playing as Corvo. Again, if you play as Corvo, it'd be very similar to the first game, where it's like, you know, you're protecting your daughter and you're kind of getting revenge, and it's like, but when you get to play as Emily, there's like a lot more like about being able to about her role as an empress, and like kind of learning about the place that she runs, because like going from kind of being a spoiled brat, and like she's kind of recognizing her privilege in the world, and so you get those lines of thought that kind of extend outwards. And at the same time, it's the Abbey, actually, the Abbey of the Everyman, not the Order. I was thinking of like of like some random PS4 game.
Oh, okay, cool.
But the Abbey is like the religious sect. So in that game, since you are, what's interesting is because you are part of like the leadership of the world, like, or you're like running everything, the Abbey works for you. In the first game, the Abbey is kind of an enemy, and then since they were working for like kind of the false. The coup that like overthrew you. And the second game, like they're basically your police force, but they're kind of also, they're still shitty people. Like they are all about like I mean they're anti-outsider, they're anti like magical powers. Like they're trying to kind of, it's very like Inquisition-y, kind of shut down any kind of weird witchcraft. Like it's kind of like calls back to a lot of like the worst impulses of religion, organized religion.
And suppress
Anything creative or interesting and like weird. It's all about, you know, they wear these masks so you can't see their faces. Like it's not a good looking organization.
No.
But it's like they're allied with you much more in this game, in the second game, because you're kind of fighting the witches. And then what's happening in Death of the Outsider is, like I said, like I mentioned before, like since Billy is like this outsider character and this marginal character to the world, you get, I think, a much more diverse and feminist perspective of the world as that had been constructed in the first two games, and especially of the Abbey, because you've played the what's it called? It's like the museum greenhouse thing.
Conservatory.
The conservatory, yeah. So like, it was probably weird for you because it's like an imperfect like narrative structure.
Yeah, I was like, where am I? Why does this matter?
Yeah, because like,
why are these posters whispering to me?
Well, that's like a whole other thing, which we probably won't get into.
Okay, cool.
Too meta, but
too meta. But I'm in the conservatory.
In the conservatory, like that's a mission in the second game.
Yeah, and there's like the sightless, the like.
Yeah, so they're not. So to quickly explain, in the second game, the witches have taken over the conservatory, and like they're like kind of your main enemy because they helped overthrow you, and so you go to the conservatory to kind of take out the lieutenant of Delilah, and she like her coven is like living there, and so it's like nothing but witches there.
Yeah.
And they're kind of trying to use like this like fantastical device to hypnotize and like possess the nun characters who work for the Abbey, to basically turn the Abbey onto the side of Delilah and the witches. So they're trying to kind of like subvert, and from within, like kind of take over the Abbey. And what happens, you know, in the second game, you just kill them all or sleep them all or whatever. Either way, you kind of break apart their coven and like kind of and end that particular like their regime. And from that perspective, you're just like, cool, I took out the bad guy and I'm moving on. And, you know, I go off and I save the day. But, and then you when you play that mission now in the Death of the Outsider, you get a lot of really gruesome scenes that like are almost like, I feel like they could have put a trigger warning in there maybe, because like it's very like torture-y. Like they basically have the Abbey like torturing a lot of the witches who had remained there, who weren't able to escape.
Right.
They basically imprison and are like literally torturing these witches to death to try and figure out what makes them, where they get their outsiders magic from. And you caused this.
Like the psycho doctor notes were like really brutal.
It's really
and, like,
absolutely
the audio
brutal.
Recordings,
yeah, the recordings
like,
are
what is going on?
Intense. And you caused this, like you the player, like through the actions of Emily or Corvo in the same game, and aligned with that power structure, are responsible for that happening. So, and then in the third game, you're kind of like, it's almost like the Hotline Miami, like where you, after you kill a room full of people, you have to walk through the corpses to get back outside to your car. It's like my favorite part of that game.
Yeah.
Like they cut the music, and you're just like walking through the blood and the guts, and you're just like, this is like,
what have I done?
Yeah, reap what you've sown, etc.
Yeah.
Like see what you have done as your actions have caused. So they're kind of doing that in the structure of a whole mission. And this time you're like Megan, who is, or Billy Lurk, who's like this outsider character, and like you really like, I think it really unmasked the Abbey even more so as like just like monsters, you know. And then you get the contract that's like kill them all, and you're like, cool, I can do this. This seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
And it's like probably and it's interesting because like probably the only time in Dishonored where you're like, oh yeah, this is like, you know, you're killing because like it's like it's real like redemption, you know. I mean, there are a few times like where you're like
justified violence,
where you feel like it would be driven by the character's anger, especially like in the beginning of Dishonored 2, where you like you were just like betrayed by your guard. So you're like, then you can go and like kill them when you escape the castle. Because you're like, fuck you. You just like
a perfect reversal.
But in the case of Death of the Outsider, it's similar. Where it's just like, you know, you're kind of, this is like revenge, like just pure revenge, where you're trying to kind of this organization that is allied with the previous protagonist is now. And so I really like the way the story kind of places the character, and it's just so interesting to like play as Billy Lurk and like have her perspective that's like not one that's a standard one in the world of games. Like you're not like straight white cop, like you are like a criminal outsider, like you're kind of aimless, like you don't really have like a reason d'etre, like a reason to do shit.
I felt that as well, and it was interesting because usually I will bemoan the lack of story or connection to the character, but I actually loved it in this case because I was just sort of like, here's a character who has enough personality. She's hilarious. Some of her reactions to like the in-game happenings are really, really funny. Where you find like a secret like code to get into like the bank guys, like whatever, like the tattoo guy.
Oh yeah.
And his second mission is she's like a secret knock. Like she's like, come on, like what is this? And it's just like a throwaway line, but it helped me build enough connection with her, but really not enough of a connection that I felt I had to like uphold my usual no kill. You know, when I really inhabit a character, I tend to put a bit of myself into them, and in this case I was just like playing it to have fun, like playing it for fun's sake, really approaching it more of a toy box than anything else. Actually approaching it more of a toy box than I even was able to with Hitman. Somehow Hitman, maybe again because of the pace of it, it's so slow and methodical that I was very careful with everything that I did. Every body that I like, you know, slept and then dragged around, every, you know, turn of the faucet to trigger a guard's, you know, curiosity, like it was all like really careful. And in this one I was just like running at full speed, being like, touch this, touch that, do that, do that.
And it forgives your transgressions a lot more easily. Like you can escape, you can kill a guard, and then like the alert level will go back down. And
there was a moment where I was like, you know, moving my dispel or displace like marker around, which is a spell that basically allows you to like teleport yourself a short distance away, like the Nightcrawler Banff. Like you have to be line of sight. So I was like moving it around, and I was like, how am I going to get out of this scenario without being seen? Ugh. And I like had opened a door, and I realized in a moment of just sweeping my reticule around that I could like spawn on the open door frame. And I was like, cheese. And I just started like going from like door top to door top, and like obviously in a real world scenario people would be like, what the fuck is that? But I was just like just above eye line, and so these guards were like going through their like canned stuff, and I'm just like going from door top to door top, being like, I love video games, they're not real. You know, and having fun with it. Having real fun with it. Or like, you know, sending out a BAMP for like a displace again, and then like going down and like getting into melee combat with some people, and as soon as shit got hairy, just teleporting myself up in the sky above the spot that I was at and coming back down with a murdering blow. So it's like, it was liberating and just empty enough that I could just have fun, you know?
Sure.
Or just, I guess not empty, I had enough distance from it that I could just have fun with it.
Which is great. I think it's a good use of an expansion. It's like this. Here's like more fun of the game we've already kind of built, painstakingly constructed. Here's some of the levels we like redesigned them and then like kind of made them interesting in different ways. Yeah. For me, narratively, for you, like just like mechanically, which is also
fun,
great.
Weird.
I mean, do you have like to wrap it up? Do you have any kind of favorite moments that you can remember, like, or that you like that stand out to you?
Yeah, I think there were a couple of moments when I was in the bank was probably my favorite mission because it was so like it was so perfect in terms of like ludology, like ludological approach to games versus like narrative, because you're like no the story needs you to break into a bank, but like mechanically that's so perfect because a bank is a vault full of different locks and access points, and breaking into one is
full of guards.
Full of guards. It's like a storied, simple setup, and so that whole mission was a lot of fun for me. I think I spent more than 10 hours in that scenario, not just on one playthrough, but like going through it multiple times. So I think the second time that I played through the bank, after painstakingly play it, I beat it again in like 15 or 20 minutes. But that second playthrough was so much fun for me because that's the moment where I took the guardrails off myself, and I was like, I'm gonna murder everybody that gets in my way. And it was more fluid, so I can't remember. It's not like there was one moment that really did it
like
for
a
me.
level as a whole.
And the ability to like, I just unlocked the like quick displace function where you don't have to painstakingly like set it up and then do it. You can just like quick touch it to like move over to that place. And at that point, I was just like jumping. I like knew I couldn't reach a thing, but I was like, death has no penalty. So I'd like sprint towards a ledge, like jump off, displace myself. I'd be like, this is awesome.
And it has like, that physical thing, or if you're running and jumping while displacing forward, you'll just like keep going.
Oh yeah,
like, the momentum will, like, swing you forward.
Keeps,
you go crazy.
How about you?
The bank shop as well, like as a level, I think was just like by far my favorite, because I mean, I think the challenge and like just the structure of the level was just like so interesting and fun. Like just like I don't know, it just like ticked all my gameplay boxes where you're just like, these are puzzles, but they're also just like visual and architectural spaces that are like that are how you are solving them, or like is a visual method. And like it's like,
you have to find an entrance.
But it's just like but it's so it kind of like it's that angle of approach that makes the puzzle so like, I guess, interesting to me. I mean, like earlier in that level, like because I did the whole thing where you do the or some kind of toxin, formaldehyde, paint thinner to kind of like make everybody go to sleep.
Papa juice or whatever it's called, like Papa's something.
Papa's opium
den shit.
But I wanted to steal it without like getting into a fight, and it's pretty hard to do because and I didn't want to buy it. I was like, fuck that, I'm not paying for this shit.
That's my man.
So I like kind of put my little displace figure on a balcony that was like away from everybody, and then I kind of snuck around until I was like right next to the bottle. So I just like jumped down, grabbed it, and then like everyone's like, "Oh my god,
what's your
picture?" And you're just like, "Boom, gone." And
that's like, really cool.
And it's such a cool like
that's really fucking
use
cool.
of displace because like you can like leave it there as like this escape hatch.
Yeah.
So I'm just like I'm literally like maybe you see me, but I don't care because you're not gonna catch me. You don't know where I went.
I'm out.
And I'm gone.
Billy Lurk is out.
It's the beauty of like I think when Dishonored works its best is when like it gives you that. I mean, I brought it up in past episodes talking about it, but just it's this game that allows you to really perform and like kind of take pleasure in looking cool and like in being graceful in your movements, and like it's just like so fun when you can pull it off.
Yeah.
And that level just gives you like a ton of opportunities to do that because there's so many, like, especially if you want to be stealthy about it.
Yeah.
Because the main like one of the contracts, which is basically to get in and out without them ever knowing you were there.
Yeah, the shadow shit.
It was crazy hard.
Oh, you did it.
I did. I had so many quick saves. You wouldn't
even believe. That's true. Yeah, you had to spam the quick save.
But I mean, like, a lot of it was just figuring out how the systems worked, because I was like, okay, I'm in here. Like, how do I? Because basically it's a moving safe, and you're like, how do I break into it without like the guard being like, hey, what's he already doing over there? And then I realized you could use the mic to kind of like tell them everything's cool, and then like you're like, I was like, that's awesome, because like I didn't know that it was like this feedback is very like a narrative layer where you're really like kind of embodying Billy Lurk, and you're
Absolutely.
like just like trying to like act cool about like robbing them without like waking up anybody. Like, all right, that one guy's awake for some reason.
Actually,
but...
it's interesting. You just sorry, you can.
Oh yeah, that's it.
That just reminded me of probably my favorite moment in like single moment was a moment of total buffoonery on my part, where I had like broken into the bank. I found the code, or like the passcode, so I used the microphone to gain access into the vault, and I got everything out of the vault. But when I was getting everything out of the vault, the guard was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Someone, and I like pull the alarm, and now like all the guards know that there's someone bad in the vault area.
Uh-huh.
And me, like an idiot, I had like disabled the mechanical guards that were at the entrance that I like microphoned into.
Yeah.
But for some dumb reason, I forgot that a human guard had let me into that space. So I'm just like walking, and the guy's like, "Hey, wait a minute! You're not supposed to be here!" And I was like, cue the Benny Hill theme! And I was like, I was just like running, like I was like, "Dismount! This place!
Yeah.
It was like hilarious.
Yeah, just like the clumsy thief.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like once you have like the object and you're just like hightailing it out of there,
kind of like
it was great.
Football like blocking.
Yeah, totally. I just kept on like displacing myself above a guard and like falling on them and just like kept on running.
Yeah,
so it was really fun.
No, I mean it's fun. Both ways are fun. That's what's great about it.
Yeah,
but yeah, it was a good time.
It was a solid time.
Good time.
Yeah,
solid
really fun.
game.
Like 20-hour experience. Really fun.
Yeah. I'm glad I recommended it, because it's like Dishonored 2 is really a good game as well, and I hope you eventually play it. But it's a little bit more of a mouthful to something. You have to really like take your time with it. Like,
and I would try to like no kill it, and I would try to do it like.
And if one level takes 10 hours, it's gonna take you a while to just beat that game.
Oh, it take me forever.
Take you quite a while. So
nice way to rip me on that one.
Well, it's like because I know you better. I was like, here's the expansion. It's like a lot more. It's a tighter experience. Like they kind of cut off the extra fat, and like you got Dishonored in like this a microcosm of what Dishonored might be.
Totally, the distillation of Dishonored.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So as per usual, thank you so much for watching or listening. And thanks to @OldSchoolBrian on Twitter, @OldSchoolBrian, who does our theme music. And thank you, Yussef, for dishonoring me so well.
I hope you feel honored by my dishonor.
I was honored by your Dishonored.
All right.
Awesome.
Till next time.
Cheers, guys.